of those things that is just dear and dear to my heart. And so today we're going to meet one of the specialists that is an artist, not just a culinary specialist, but a perfectionist in terms of food. Before we start and go to our guests, I'm going to brag a little bit about the work of CEO Debria Rice and the Divine Catering team. And I'm going to share a couple of photos of some of the exceptional work that Divine Catering and Events performs throughout the Dayton area. It's not just about the experience of eating food, it's that experience of how it looks that tries to make you salivate before you even get to your plate. And they are exceptional at providing not only small events, but large events. They specialize in weddings, they specialize in high-end events, and they can do something even as simple as cater school lunches. They have done box lunches around the region for corporate interests, and they can do your company picnics. When you have a high-end event, you have to have high-end food, which means it not only has to taste good, it has to look good, because people remember how your buffet tables look. And I have to tell you, Divine Catering gets it. Now, I'd like to introduce to you Debria Rice, our culinary CEO of Divine Catering. Welcome to Tabernacle Talks, Debria.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle. I appreciate the invite, and I am excited to be here with you today. I just appreciate the invite, and I thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, I have a ton of questions, so I'm going to start. Why did you form Divine Catering? Can you kind of tell me a little bit about your journey in developing a catering company?
Yes, Divine Catering Events is 15 years old, started back in 2005, and honestly, food runs in my family. My grandfather was the owner of the Duke's Club. Also, I had an uncle who owned the Ogletrees, a restaurant, years and years ago before I was born. But food runs in the family, and it's just something that I've always enjoyed. I enjoyed cooking, and I was pretty good at it, so I thought I would dabble and get started with catering. So I started back in 2005, just started with doing weddings, and it was really a part-time thing. When I did it, I was working full-time, and I would just do, things on the weekend, honestly. But eventually that passion grew. I started to become more interested, more intrigued in what I was doing, and just wanted to be able to service more people. So I decided almost 4 years ago to do this on a full-time basis. So Divine Catering Events, we moved into a commercial kitchen on Linden Avenue is where we are now. And we have grown tremendously. We are now, again, offering corporate catering. We're doing schools and daycares. We offer kitchen rental, depending on, that what's needed. We do a fun event called Chopped pre-COVID, but hopefully once COVID is over, we'll get back to doing that. And we just like to, serve our community. So again, it's just been a passion. I enjoy catering as well as event planning, which is actually my number one passion. But we do both, and we are a full service, one-stop shop. And, that's just kind of where we are and how we started.
Wonderful information. What are the most requested food items when people come to you and they want to have an event catered? Kind of share with us what are the top things that people ask for.
Well, I am known for my macaroni and cheese. You know how we like our macaroni and cheese, so that is definitely one of our top requested items. The pound cake that I'm making today is definitely another one. Peach cobbler. Collard greens is a top choice. Our sliced roast beef will melt in your mouth. Sweet potato souffle. Oh my goodness, guys. It's awesome. But those are some of the top requested items. But we do all types of cuisines, not just that American soul food. We do Italian. We do taco bars. I've even done a Mediterranean menu before. So we're not just, one in one bubble. We do all types of stuff.
Amazing. Well, I know that all of our listening audience is waiting for us to show the demo for the pound cake. But before we do that, I thought we'd kind of give everybody a history lesson about pound cake. So we've got a couple of slides that we're going to share with you about the history of pound cake. And that takes us back to actually the 18th century. It came from Northern Europe, and that surprised me. So you'll see there that we've kind of circled on our map that it comes from Northern Europe. And the first documented recipe for a pound cake we found was in a cookbook called The Art of Cookery, and that was published in 1747 by Hannah Glass. And she was down on her luck, and she thought, I needed a way to be able to make money. So Hannah actually wrote and published recipes in this book. Now, it's stated that, she plagiarized some of her recipes, but at that time, she just kind of borrowed recipes. And what I found so fascinating about the pound cake recipe in her book, and I'll just kind of share with you some of the things that she said you take a pound of butter, you beat it in an earthen pan with your hand, one direction, till it's a fine, thick cream. You take 12 eggs, but then you take half the whites out, and you beat it with a pound of flour, a pound of sugar, and you add a few caraways, and you beat it well together for an hour with your hand. Now, I think that's hysterical for anybody who's watching this, because there's a recipe that basically says go in the same direction for an entire hour. And again, this is 1747, so we don't have hand mixers, we don't have power mixers. So I can imagine making a cake, a pound cake during those times probably was an all-day thing. So then we go to the first defined recipe on American soil, and that's right around 1754, where you now have the colonists. So again, we have that recipe that starts in Northern Europe, and now the colonists come to America, and they bring the first recipe for a pound cake with us. And then it's later published. We go on to see the book called American Cookery by Amelia Simmons, and we've got a photo of her there, where she again talks about her recipe. And again, her recipe is 1 pound of sugar, 1 pound of butter, 1 pound of flour, 1 pound or 10 eggs, rose water, and they call it 1 gill. And a gill is like 1/4 of a pint, spices to taste. And then she says, watch it well for 15 minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, 15 minutes with all those ingredients, there's no way you could make a cake. But actually they had cold ovens. They didn't have commercial ovens like we did. So obviously you had to sit there and watch and wait until your cake baked. So I thought that was pretty interesting history about the actual pound cake itself. Let's move on to our questions. You always hear that not all ingredients are the same. So can you share with us, are some ingredients better than others for pound cakes?
I find that most of the ingredients that I have used, my pound cakes typically come out the same. Now, one ingredient I do use each time, because I use cake flour and not all-purpose flour. Cake flour is better, of course, when you're making a cake, there's not as much gluten. But I use Swan's Down, so that's something that I typically use. But when it comes to eggs or sugar or anything like that, or butter, I do use salted butter. But I find that, whether I get the store brand or the name brand, it's usually comes out great either way.
Thanks for sharing that. I know that when I bake, I always am challenged with, do I buy vanilla extract? Do I buy vanilla flavoring? Can you talk to us about what the difference is between those two things and storage? Because I know if anybody looks in anyone's cabinet, they're probably going to see a bunch of flavoring up there. And I know there are expiration dates. So I'm really challenging everybody in the audience to go and look at the expiration dates on all those things up in your closets, your food cabinets. Can you talk about that some?
Yes. Please check your expiration dates. And I know that's tough because we buy seasonings and stuff over and over because we forget we have them, and then we just throw them in the front and we forget what's in the back. But the shelf life for flavorings is anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on if you're keeping it in a cool, dry place. And then the difference between an extract and a flavoring, and this is something that I had to research myself just to kind of see what the difference really is. It's actually not much of a difference. So you're able to switch out extract with flavoring when you're baking because it's at such a high temperature that it actually is not going to make much of a difference. Now, if you're doing something that's at a lower temperature, maybe like a custard or a ice cream or something like that, it may make a difference in your taste. But when you're baking a cake, extract or vanilla flavoring will work. Either one will work fine. So it's a preference. You can try it. But honestly, extracts are more expensive. So if you want to save a couple of dollars, you can actually use flavoring and your cakes just still come out great.
Thanks for sharing that information. Now, I can remember when, I'm going to take you back down memory lane. I brought some pans with me. And I have kind of this pan, it's a small pan, you can see. And then I've got these pans. You know, we all have these pans that we inherit from people. And then we have the notorious pan. What can you talk to me about pans? Are all pans equal?
Not necessarily. I would say yes and no. Now, that first pan you pulled out, Dr. Michelle, that's kind of small. So I'm going to say that one will not work for your your pound cake. But the bundt pan and the tube pan should actually either one of them should work. But even though they're supposed to be the same size, technically the tube pan is probably going to be better. I think all of your batter will fit in that tube pan. The bundt pan, you can still use it, of course, but it may not fit all of your batter. So, but as far as, you know, the type of pan, I've used both. I've also used loaf pans when I've made a pound cake. So it's really a preference. You just want to make sure that you know, oil them and flour them and all that good stuff.
And you talk about oil and flour. I've seen people use wax paper in the bottom of pans. I've seen people use brown paper bags in the bottom of pans. Why do people do that?
Now, I've actually never seen a brown paper bag. I don't know. But wax paper and parchment paper is good to help with sticking. If you can oil it and use parchment paper, and that will actually help you to get your cake or whatever you're baking out easier. Wax paper is actually not good for baking. It won't withstand that high temperature. So you don't want to use wax paper. It is a difference between wax and parchment. Parchment paper is fine. Wax paper is not.
Thank you. So I guess I need to get rid of the wax paper. Okay, now we are going to actually go to the demonstration for making Debria's famous lemon pound cake. I'm so excited. Okay, let's roll it.
All right, so here we go. We made the cake. Again, I said I used Swan's Down cake flour. And here are the ingredients that you're going to need. We used 3 sticks of salted butter, room temperature, 3 cups of granulated sugar, 5 eggs, 3 cups of cake flour. For today, I'm using 8 ounces of 7-Up, but you can use any liquid of your choice. And I'm going to use a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So I preheated my oven already to 350. Now I'm going to go ahead and cream my butter. So use whatever type of mixer that you have, a stand mixer or hand mixer is fine. But I'm creaming my butter so that I can get ready to blend it with my sugar. So now that the butter is creamed, that can take anywhere from, 1 to 7 minutes, depending on how soft it is. You now want to add in your sugar. And you'll combine the sugar until it's creamy. And I usually start with a lower speed first. That way we don't get sugar everywhere. And then I'll turn that speed up. And one thing that's important when making cakes or baking is that you measure accurately. Be sure to use a dry ingredient measuring cup. And then you also want to make sure that you level your ingredients. So you want to use a spatula or knife to level that out, because any extra can cause a bad cake. If you have extra flour, it'll be too dry. If you have extra sugar, it can cause your cake to fall. So we've blended that up, and now I'm just showing you the type of pan that I used today. I used a bundt pan, and I used baking spray. So it has oil and the flour already in the spray. So I just put a nice heavy coat on it. Now, if you're old-fashioned and you don't want to use that, that's fine. You can use shortening or Crisco, and then you can just lightly flour the pan. So now that we've let our butter and our sugar cream together, and that might take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on, again, the softness, we're going to add in our eggs. Now, when you add in your eggs, you want to do that one at a time. And again, that was 5 eggs, so you're going to do it one at a time. And you want to just beat the eggs in until the yolk disappears. And once you see that yolk has disappeared, then you add in your next egg until you get to all 5. And you don't want to overbeat the eggs, but just make sure that they're incorporated really well. All right, now that we have our eggs in, we're going to add in our cake flour, but we're going to alternate that with our liquid. So we're first going to start with the flour. And again, make sure you turn your speed down so you don't get flour everywhere. Then we're going to add in a little liquid. Each time we do that, we're going to let the mixer do its job and mix everything in. You just want to blend it really well after each addition. And you're going to do that until it's incorporated pretty well. And you don't want to over mix that because it will create a tough or rubbery cake. And again, we're alternating the dry ingredient with our liquid, and you want to end with your dry ingredient. All righty, and again, if you need to adjust your speed, do that at any time. If you need to turn it down or turn it up, just make sure, again, that you're constantly checking your batter and making sure that you're not over mixing it. And also during the making of your cake, at some point, you're going to want to stop it and scrape down the sides and scrape the bottom. You just want to make sure that you don't have any sugar or butter or anything that might be stuck to the bottom of the pan or the sides of the pan that has not been incorporated in your batter. So you want to do that, and once you've done that, you'll add in your extract. Now for this cake, I actually only used vanilla, but I actually like to use vanilla and lemon, especially when I'm, of course, doing a lemon pound cake. I'm going to add lemon. And again, the liquid I used was 7-Up, so that helps when you're making a lemon pound cake. So you're going to incorporate that extract. Maybe mix that in for a minute or two. And again, once you're done, you'll take if you're using a stand mixer, of course, you'll take that beater out. And I usually take a spatula and I'll scrape that down, make sure I get all the batter that I can. And again, I'm just scraping the beater. And I'm going to mix up the cake one last time just to make sure all of my ingredients have been incorporated. I want to make sure that that final extract that I added was incorporated. And again, if you want to use vanilla flavoring, you're welcome to do so, or lemon flavoring. I've done a strawberry pound cake before, so if you want to use that, you can really get creative when it comes to the flavor and the liquid. Now, the measurements on the dry ingredients, baking is a science, so you want to keep those the same. And now I'm just pouring in the batter into the pan. And you just want to make sure you try to make it as even as possible. Getting all the batter in, or what will fit, depending on the size of your pan. Just scrape down the sides really well. And once I get all of the batter into the pan, I will use that same rubber spatula to kind of even it out. And then I also shake the pan a little bit. And again, just to make sure that the batter is even in the cake pan. And that's it. We are ready to bake. So from here, I am just going to put it in our oven on the middle rack. The oven was set to 350. And you're going to bake that for approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. Of course, you know, all ovens are different. Temperatures vary, times may vary, but you'll gauge that, you know, with your own oven, and you can check your cake. And here we go. Our cake is done. Now, I took the cake out, and I let it cool for just a few minutes, and then I flipped it onto the cooling rack, and I actually took the cake out before it cooled completely. And everything came out perfectly, no sticking or anything. And here's our final view of the cake. We did a glaze on this particular cake, and that's something that is done with a confectioner's sugar, butter, and liquid of your choice. Again, you can use heavy cream, or I use 7-Up actually, and flavoring, so lemon flavoring or extract, vanilla. And then you just glaze your cake. Now, oftentimes I will do a caramel icing, which I like caramel really well. So that's a homemade caramel that you make with brown sugar and butter and milk. It's very good. So just depending on what it is that you want, what your, you know, what you have a taste for that day when you're making that cake, or what kind of cake you're making, you can, you know, make any kind of icing to go on it. Or you can choose not to do any icing at all, actually. Some people make pound cakes and they don't put any icing on it.
That cake is perfect. And I hope everybody in the audience can see that cake is perfect. I do have a couple of questions. The actual attachment that you used with your blender, I noticed it didn't look like the typical beater. Why did you use that attachment?
I just find that the whisk attachment, I guess is what it's called, just works better for me. I feel like it helps incorporate the cake, you know, more. I can't even think of the type of other attachment that comes with it, but because I'm thinking about when you're using a hand mixer, you have the beaters that you would use, so that one just works better for me when I'm, you know, making those cakes.
Wonderful. Well, now I'm hungry, and I don't know if everybody in the audience is hungry, but I'm hungry. But I do want to issue a challenge to everyone out there that's watching. We want you to try to make this cake. Now, we've given you great directions. You can go back and you can review this video 100 times, but we want you to try to make this cake, and then we want you to take a picture and send it to us here at tabernacletalks@gmail.com. Again, try to bake your cake, send us a picture at tabernacletalks@gmail.com, and we will feature your cake. If you have a little problem with the cake, still send us a picture of that too, and we'll try to get in touch with Devria to see if she can help you with your cake challenges. I want to thank you so much. And I have to give a shameless plug, not only for their cakes, but best potato salad in town. Absolutely the best. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invite. I enjoyed it. I had a great time. And hopefully you all have me back.
We will. Thank you.